everybody, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers Studio Series 86 Core Class Exosuit Spike Witwicky, and the figures turned out great. Honestly, as far as a Core or Legends class figure is concerned, this is probably one of the best we've seen for quite some time, and this is indeed our first entry into the 86 subline for the Core Class, and I think it's a really nice character to start off with. Of course, the last time we in fact actually saw an Exosuit in the mainline, he came packaged with that Dinobot Studio Series Slug, and let's be honest, that figure was absolutely diabolical. It had barely any points of articulation, was pre-posed, and for the most part was pretty damn useless, and I really have no idea as to why they even bothered releasing that if they had plans to package this figure in. Now, in regards to the actual Exosuit itself, I've always thought it to be an incredibly cool concept. I've always loved the design of the Exosuit. Of course, actually having the humans encased within these massive mechanical machines I think is really nicely done, and this figure is a great example of Spike as he appeared, of course, in the 86 movie. You can see that in terms of the detail, really nicely done. I was very surprised to see just how much sculpt work has in fact actually been packed into the head. Of course, when this guy was rumoured to come out, none of us really knew whether or not we would indeed actually see a human head within the dome, but you can see some fantastic looking sculpt work going on in there. I would have loved to have seen maybe some paint to pick out the lips as well as the eyebrows and eyes. I think that is something they definitely could have done. Maybe due to the scale it would have turned out a little sloppy, but the sculpt is definitely there, and you can see that in terms of the actual exosuit itself, it looks really nicely done. I think the colour they've used is great. Of course, this baby blue plastic as well as some baby blue paint apps, and here for the actual torso, it has been cast out of this very nice white. You can see some very nice looking sculpt work going on here for the shins and thighs, and even as we spin our attention to the back, we've got what appear to be thrusters or turbines, and you can see there's some nice exhausts at the actual back of the arms which look really impressive. Even here at the back of the head, you can see they've fully sculpted as well as painted the hair as well as the ears. We have got a slight hollowed out section here at the back of Spike's head, but of course, who's really going to be displaying this guy from the back? For the most part, I think he's really well done. You can see there is some kibble here at the shoulders. It would have been nice to have seen them maybe find a way to conceal these wheels, but once again, not looking too bad at all, and is definitely a marked improvement when in comparison to the previous release. Now, in regards to articulation, I was very surprised to see that he does in fact actually have a head joint. So as we turn our attention to the back, you can see we have this slider joint, which when toggled left to right, will in fact actually rotate Spike's head. That is such a nice attention to detail. Honestly, something they didn't have to engineer, and I'm really glad they did. So of course, you can in fact actually get him looking over to the side. As far as the arms are concerned, we do get a rotation here at the shoulder, although it will in fact actually bring all of the kibble with it. We get a hinge joint out to the side, as well as a hinge joint here for the elbow, a rotation at where I presume the elbow would be, and then sadly no form of wrist rotation. Something which I definitely think they could have added would have been a waist rotation. That is something that is not on this figure at all, and you can see that it doesn't in fact actually play any role in transformation at all. This is merely just a solid piece, so I definitely think it wouldn't have cost them anything to have just added a rotation here. So that is a slight drawback, but as far as the legs are concerned, these can in fact actually hinge forwards that far, back to that far, of course, can do the split. We finally actually get a knee joint here for an exosuit figure, so this of course can bend roughly to 90, and the way they've sculpted the feet, you can see that we do get a slight cutout just to make him look slightly more dynamic when of course displaying him upon the shelf. Now, in regards to accessories, Spike does in fact actually include two blast effects, so you can see these are a complete brand new unique sculpt for this particular figure. I think these have turned out really nicely, of course cast out of this yellow plastic, and these can simply be pegged here onto the back of the arm, so you can have Spike almost power blast a Decepticon in the face, which I think is a really nice touch. And just overall, this suit is really giving me vibes from the Alien movies, of course, when Ripley does have, I believe it's the power loader, but it looks really reminiscent of that. And for those of you wondering, you can in fact actually rotate these sections around due to transformation, so if you wanted Spike to be maybe firing at the enemy Decepticons or blasting his way through a door, then you can definitely have that going on. And once again, that is not a bad look for this character at all. As far as the comparison goes with the previous released exosuit that came with Slug, absolutely demolishes it. Literally obliterates the previous version. This is so damn bad when in comparison to our new Core Class release. And for those of you wondering whether or not this guy does in fact actually borrow any components from the previous release, no, he is a complete brand new sculpt. You can see that just in general, the scale is a lot larger here with our new Core Class release. Here he is alongside the Netflix Eartherized Bumblebee, and I actually don't think the scale is too bad. Maybe Bumblebee should be slightly bigger, but we'll touch base more with that in just a second. You can see that in regards to a side-by-side comparison, I actually think they look really nice with one another. So of course, if you are in fact actually after an exosuit to scale with the mainline figures, I think that as far as an actual official release is concerned, this is probably your best option to go with. But personally, I actually think this new Core Class figure scales really nicely with the masterpiece Bumblebee. Of course, we didn't in fact actually see a revised version of the exosuit exosuit released with this 2.0 Bumblebee. So for those of you looking for a more updated version of that character, then I definitely think this core class figure will be the perfect fit. I really do think the scale is a little better when in comparison to some of the mainline offerings, and in regards to an actual design, I don't think that he's too far off what we're seeing here with the MP Bumblebee. And for those of you who may be wondering, sadly our new core class Spike is not compatible with the Studio Series Slug, despite him having what resemble two ports here on the inside. These are merely just to hold the wheels in for vehicle mode, and sadly the legs don't in fact actually have enough room to split over the top here of where these pegs are. But in terms of a side-by-side comparison, I actually don't think these two guys look bad at all, and I would have absolutely loved this actual core class Spike to have come packaged with Slug the first time round. I think this would have created a really nice set instead of giving us that really crappy exosuit that we just took a look at in the comparisons. And taking a look at Spike amongst some of the previously released core class figures, we've got him compared next to the Bumblebee movie Shockwave, as well as the buzzworthy Bumblebee. And you can see that whilst of course he won't in fact actually be to scale with any of these figures as far as the scale overall for the Legends or core class line is concerned, I actually think he's pretty decently done. Of course he's slightly smaller than Shockwave, but in regards to engineering, articulation and overall mass, I do in fact actually find him to be bigger than Shockwave, and he is indeed a little bigger than the buzzworthy Bumblebee. Transformation wise, surprisingly actually quite complex. So to begin with, I personally like to take the slider and just center that. We can then take the dome, which doesn't appear to be removable. I did try to remove it, but it does appear to be fixed, and of course considering it's cast out of transparent plastic, I definitely don't want to apply too much force to that. But here for conversion, you simply just take the dome and rotate it so that these white sections are now dead in the center. We can then take these shoulder sections, bring these down so that of course the wheels are now facing this way. We can then turn our attention to the legs, just rotate here at the knees, and then for this here you can see how we've almost got a slot in between these two tabs, as essentially you're just going to snap that section in and then bend forward, and you can see this circular cutout will in fact peg into these two tabs that we've got going on there. So just snap them in there, come here to this side, and of course repeat the exact same process. So clip that into place, bring this section to the back, and just snap these two halves together. And then in regards to the conversion of the arms, we simply take this section, rotate it like so, bring this to the back, rotate here also, and you can see due to the mushroom joint we almost have this cutout that will in fact actually be filled via this tab here. So just lock that into place, of course, come here to this side and repeat the exact same process. So rotate here, snap that section into place, and then we have Spike Witwicky in the exosuit, fully transformed up into, I believe it's an almost shuttle, and surprisingly actually not looking too bad, especially from a front-on perspective. Sadly, they didn't give us the wheels here on the exterior, but I actually don't think it's a bad looking alt mode at all, especially for that $10 price point, and considering this guy does already have quite a lot going on in regards to transformation, I think they've done a pretty decent job. And surprisingly, we do in fact actually get fully functioning wheels on this guy, and I was just not expecting that at all, especially when in comparison to some of the previous core class releases, such as say the Tank Megatron that came packaged for Kingdom, or of course the Studio Series core class Shockwave. None of them actually had proper wheels, but you can see here with Spike, he does indeed actually have two pairs, which is really nicely done, and the guy can in fact actually glide along the ground with absolute ease. Now with him, of course, fully transformed into the shuttle mode, it makes more sense to in fact actually bring the blast effects into the equation. So much like bot mode, they peg into the exact same spot, and there you can see we've got Spike with those blast effects. Overall, a very nicely done looking figure. And so, some final thoughts for the Transformers Studio Series 86 Core Class Exosuit Spike Witwicky. In all, I think it's a great figure, in particular for that $10 price point. I think in regards to the exosuit itself, it's a fantastic representation to what we actually saw from the 86 movie. I think they've absolutely knocked it out of the park. I think the attention to detail, especially in the actual human head itself, is really nicely done. The sculpt work is definitely there. It, of course, just falls slightly short in regards to paint apps. Had they, in fact, actually painted the eyes and eyebrows, I actually think it would have looked really nicely done, but I'm pretty certain that some customizers, maybe slightly braver than I am, maybe can in fact actually pop that cap off, and then maybe you can indeed actually paint the eyes yourself. I think that in regards to the actual sculpt work of the exosuit, it looks really nicely done, very awesome proportions. I think the articulation is very surprising. I was not expecting him to have nowhere near as many joints packed into him as he does, and in regards to an actual exosuit mainline figure, it is by far the best best one I think we've seen since that Masterpiece version that of course came packaged with the original Bumblebee. I think that in regards to transformation, it is indeed actually quite involved despite the price and scale point, and it results in a pretty decent almost shuttle mode. It's definitely not as perfect as the likes of the MP release, but in regards to $10, I really don't think you can go wrong, and I think the actual inclusion of a slider joint which allows you to actually articulate the head in the bot mode is once again a very nice touch. Of course, I would have absolutely loved to have seen maybe a waist rotation. I definitely think that is something they could have done, and considering they'll no doubt actually utilize this in the future for maybe a Daniel variant, I do in fact actually think it would have been a pretty good investment. But as it stands, this is a really nice looking figure, probably one of the best Studio Series core class releases that we've seen so far, even being slightly better than Ravage and Shockwave. And you guys know that I'm mainly a live action movie guy, so to say that about this particular animated character is definitely saying something about the figure. He really is pretty nicely done and demolishes that previous version that of course came packaged with the Studio Series Slug. I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comment section below. What do you guys think of this particular exosuit? Is it a figure that you guys plan on adding to the collection? And do you guys rate it as highly as I do? I'd love to hear your thoughts on also the review. And until my next video, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.